Hello guys and welcome to another episode of the Crouching Tiger Hidden Dragon podcast. My name is Michael and today we are recapping Wonderboy versus Till. And we're going to talk about that main event, and then we're going to talk about Neil Magny's fight with Craig White, and the last fight that we're going to recap will be Jason Knight versus Makwan Amirkhani. So let's just get right into it. First, let's talk about the main event. Beat Wonderboy Thomson versus Darren Till. As I mentioned in the pre-fight breakdown of this fight, the most important things in the fight will be the place at which the fight takes place relatively to the cage, which in the matchup dynamic meant can Till pressure Wonderboy effectively, because Wonderboy is an outside fighter and that's where he does his best work, when he has space to operate in. He will take angles and work in and out with his combinations. And the second important thing was the pace of the fight, because Wonderboy throws more volume than Till, and Till's job will be to slow down the fight and get Wonderboy in the positions where he would not be able to throw as much strikes as he wants to, so that the fight is fought at Till's pace. Another thing that would be an advantage is Till's weight. As we all know, he missed weight by something like 3 pounds. So if he can get into the clinch, just because of the weight advantage and strength, he might be able to hold Wonderboy there and slow down the pace in that way, or at least try to. And that's what I thought before the fight. That's what we talked about on the previous show. And right as the fight starts, Till is moving forward, not very aggressive, but showing his initiative, showing what he wants to do, trying to figure out what and how Wonderboy is going to react to him. A little bit of a filling out process, Till's taking small steps, throwing feints, and Wonderboy, as he always does, trying not to get trapped against the cage. And the thing that we've talked about in the previous episode of the show, the sidekick that Wonderboy counters with when his opponents want to advance on him, and he was using that as well. Something like 3 minutes into the first round, and you can see that Till is pressuring Wonderboy ever so slightly with his footwork, and it's working, but he's not throwing the strikes that will help him pressure like hooks and roundhouse kicks. So Wonderboy is escaping back to the open space. While I was watching this fight, I thought, hey, what if that's the game plan? Not to throw a lot. And if you think about it, Woodley was able to make Wonderboy hesitant by making him lead, and that's what Wonderboy is not comfortable doing. But it was not also the pace of the fight, but the positioning that Woodley put himself in, the distance that created, and the fear of the counter, both with the takedown and the punches. But then I thought, yeah, the volume alone is not going to make Wonderboy hesitant. So if Till pressures but doesn't throw that much, he might just slow down the pace. The problem is that if he's not going to punish Wonderboy while he's escaping to the open space, that might just make Till more tired, chasing his opponent around the cage. And the conclusion after the first round, Till needs to throw more and cut Wonderboy off with his strikes, not just the footwork. There was a moment where Wonderboy countered to the body once instead of the head after a couple of times of failed head strikes attempts, and that body shot was probably the most significant strike of the first round. Both guys not throwing a lot. Another thing that I noticed that might be the reason that Wonderboy's blitzing combinations to the head are not working is because Till is framing him off instead of what Jorge Masvidal did, which was just to cover up. And in Wonderboy's last fight, and that gave Wonderboy an opportunity to choose and pick his shots in that fight. But here Till is framing, that's why those head strikes are falling short. Okay, so after the first round ended, Till said to his corner, he didn't expect me to do that, didn't he? And his corner replied, yeah, he thought you were gonna come out flying like a crazy man. So maybe the pace was low intentionally? With the pressure that would put Wonderboy in a position of concern, because the pressure is not only physical, it's also mental. When you have your opponent in front of you as he pressures you, you feel his presence. So maybe that's what they wanted to do. The problem is that you're not gonna win a fight if you're not scoring. And Till was not scoring that much in the first round. And for Wonderboy, the advice was to attack the body, just like he had a little bit of success with that in the first round. Not only because of the opening being present, but also because of the fact that body shots sap your energy, and Till had a tough weight cut, so not a bad idea to attack the body. The second round starts a little bit different. Till is opening up a little bit more, throwing more feints, and actually using his jab. And I felt like that would help him even more with the pressure. But the funny thing was that a jab doesn't take a lot of energy, so why wasn't he using it in the first round? So that was weird. And Wonderboy started to respond by throwing his own strikes. So the volume feeds volume. The more Till will throw, I felt like the more Wonderboy will throw. And Till is not afraid of getting punched. I feel like that helped him here, because when Wonderboy would blitz in, Till would stand his ground, smothering Wonderboy's last 2 or 3 punches. Also, Till was trying to grab a collar tie and clinch up. That's a good tactic when your opponent wants to move in onto you. Later on, Till started to throw more leg kicks, and they were working as a steering tool, not letting Wonderboy to circle out as much. And by the second round, I already knew that Wonderboy wasn't throwing as much volume as he would like to. I thought that when Till pressures, he would have to throw more strikes and punish Wonderboy for moving laterally. But it looked like the subtle pressure and controlled volume and making Wonderboy lead was enough to slow down the pace. And it ended up in the second round being more productive for Till. Much more productive than the first round. Till showed he's capable of pressuring Wonderboy back to the fence. Now he has to do something about it. He needs to land strikes and score. Backing him up might not be enough for the judges, although the fight was in Liverpool, so the bias might be on Till's side. The third round, Wonderboy counters Till with a right hand as Till moves in on him. And as Till started to throw more, Wonderboy started to counter more because of the opportunities that Till gave him. Then Wonderboy tried to follow up these counters with 2 or 3 more strikes, instead of just throwing 1 or 2 punches at a time. Because Wonderboy is not comfortable leading here, he might just as well counter with more strikes. That would not be a bad idea. And at the end of the third round, Till finally landed his left hand as Wonderboy was circling off, so it didn't have a lot of pop on it, but it meant that Till is finding his range, and if he opens up, he knows he's capable of landing that punch. He just needs to do that. He just needs to open up a little bit more. Maybe he was concerned with his conditioning, but he needs to score. That's without a question. He probably was throwing more strikes than Wonderboy, but still, if you're gonna have a decision, if you're gonna fight towards a decision, you need to make sure that you're winning. And I felt like Till was looking for those opportunities, the opportunities to strike, when he felt really comfortable to throw his left hand, not just trying to throw it and hoping that it will land. And those moments were either at the beginning of the round or at the end of the round, which would mean that the conditioning was a concern just enough so that he was thinking about when he can open up more and not make himself tired. And the other moments were when he tried to walk Wonderboy into his left hand. And I actually felt like he was setting it up since the first round with those leg kicks. Till was kicking Wonderboy's left leg, and by doing so steering him into his left side so that he can set him up for the left hand. And the jab would help with that also. He wasn't throwing the jab as much, but when he was, later on in the fourth round, when he was able to touch Wonderboy with his left hand, it was off of the jab, so it was working. After the 4th round, going into the last round of the fight, the advice from Wonderboy's corner was to light him up, to throw more, mix up the target with the body-head combinations. Good advice, but it would be even better if he would do it for the last 4 rounds. He didn't really throw as much as I thought he would, so maybe that's why I'm a little bit frustrated with that. For Till, the advice was to throw more as well. Set up the left hand with 1-2 and double up the jab and really put in the power into the left hand. It was the last round of the fight, and considering the tough weight cut, that would be the round to go for it. And in the 5th round, Till had his moment. He pressured well, pushed Wonderboy back to the fence, doubled up his jab, waited for Wonderboy to throw his left hand. I'm not sure if it was a jab or a start of a combination, because after Till landed the left hand counter, he dropped Wonderboy. And he got a little bit crazy, a little bit too crazy, finally having his moment, and he tried going for the kill with some ground and pound, then he tried for a guillotine before trying to take his back. After that, they got back up to their feet with something like a minute to go. Till must have felt confident that it was enough to win him that round, because he didn't go crazy in that last minute, trying to score more or thinking that, I was able to land my left hand, let's go for it, and try to knock him out. He didn't do that though, so he must have felt comfortable with the things that he did, and he won a unanimous decision. It was a good fight, and he was able to pressure him more effectively using less tools than I thought. So congrats to him. Besides the leg kicks, I thought that he would have to use his punches in a similar way, throwing circular strikes to cut off the movement. But the footwork and the leg kicks was enough to push Wonderboy back, and that was some good work from Till on working Wonderboy's lead leg, both with leg kicks and the low 9 side kick. The left hand landed a couple of times. The one that counted the most was the knockdown, and Wonderboy wasn't thrown to the body as much as he was advised by his corner. I felt like that would have helped him in getting some momentum back, maybe even drained some of the energy from Till. Also, Wonderboy didn't throw as much as I thought he would. The pressure from Till and the fact that he stood his ground when Wonderboy attacked were good tactics, and they worked. By pressuring and making Wonderboy lead at the same time, Till was able to score enough and not get into some big trouble to win a decision. It wasn't a dominant victory, it was competitive, and they landed a similar amount of significant strikes, but the initiative was held by Till. He was dictating the pace and the positioning for the majority of the fight, and I can't argue with that decision. He won fair and square. What would be next for him? Well, he just defeated the #1 contenders, so and he was ranked, I believe, 8 before the fight, so I'm sure that he will climb the rankings and get closer to the title shot. I'm not sure if he'll get it right away, because Rafael dos Anjos and Colby Covington are fighting for the interim belt, and the winner will fight Woodley. So, and also Till said that a wrestler will pose a more of a challenge for him, so maybe Kamaru Usman. He's coming off of a 5-round victory over Maya, so they could headline an event and the winner could be an next title contender. That actually doesn't sound that bad. Let's move on into our co-main event. That was a quick one, Neil Magny versus Craig White. Just a word on Magny before I get into the breakdown of the fight. Magny is a better grappler than a striker, and because of his frame being 6 foot 3 inches and having a 80-inch reach advantage, that's fucking a lot. People think that he's a really good striker, and sure, he's not bad, but and he knows how to use his length to his advantage, but he's a way better grappler than he is a striker. Just because of his frame, people think that, oh, the guy is long, like Stefan Struve, the skyscraper. People think that, oh, obviously you're gonna use your reach, but it's harder to do than you think. So Magny knows how to use his reach and knows that he has to use it, so that's good for him. The fight was a late replacement fight for White, but he took his opportunity and, to be in the UFC as a co-main event in his home country, and it's an opportunity you can't decline. So the fight starts and you can see that White is actually doing the right thing, which is to kick Magny's legs. Magny is very susceptible to leg kicks, so I guess White did his homework here. Within like first 20 seconds he already kicked Magny's legs like four separate times. And then he attempted a clinch exchange, which was a little bit surprising because Magny has good leverage and positioning in the clinch because of his frame. So he had success in that position in the past. But White is just an inch shorter than Magny, so White was able to control the clinch for a while with one underhook. Then it was back and forth with both guys turning each other around on the cage, and you could see how White's height was playing a role here. When Magny tried to take him down with the same takedown as he tried and succeeded with when he fought Carlos Condit, just kind of lifting him up and taking his base away from him before dumping him on the ground, because White is so tall, he was able to maintain his balance and defend the takedown. After a nut shot, they get separated, and White once again was attempting the clinch, so I thought that he must have felt strong there. And then he made a mistake when he went for a takedown. He dropped a little bit too low to his knees, and Magny actually got a full mount on him. He reversed the takedown. Later on, separated once again. White was attempting the clinch again, and I mean, he didn't look bad in there, but just against a good grappler like Magny, clinch exchanges are kind of risky in a way of exposing yourself to a bad position that could get you in trouble. And with Magny being just better in those positions with the leverage, he was working for positions so that he can land some strikes. And eventually he got White into a position where he could land a knee that dropped him. From that he smelled blood and got a ground and pound finish. Good stuff from Magny. He showcased his skills in there, and I felt like White make a mistake of trying to fight a clinch fight with Magny, and it turned out that Magny was better in those positions, and that led to a finish. Magny showcased that, he showed what he's good at, so he looked good. Okay, let's talk about this one. Jason Knight versus Makwan Amirkhani. If you didn't know before the fight who Makwan Amirkhani was, then I don't blame you, because he fought 4 times in the past 3 years since he was in the UFC. But that is not to be confused with that's just some random guy who doesn't fight at all, because here's the thing, he's really talented. He's a good wrestler and even a better grappler, and his chain wrestling really impressed me in the past. So here against a fighter in Jason Knight who tends to get into the kind of fights his opponents want to fight, if Knight thinks that he can get into a grappling exchange with Amirkhani and just kind of out-grapple him because he believes he can do it and abandons the game plan or abandons good positions for the sake of he seems like just a really opportunistic guy and very confident guy, so sometimes that can get him in trouble. So that's what I thought before the fight, and as the fight starts, Knight is kicking Amirkhani's legs actually a lot. I thought that without setting those leg kicks up, he can get one of them cut and get taken down. So I thought that he needs to be a little bit more careful with that. So then they get into an exchange where Amirkhani counters Knight with a right hook and then follows up with a flying knee that misses. Then they fall into the ground and Knight pulls guard. I mean, he did that before in his UFC debut and got totally out-wrestled by a good wrestler in Tatsuya Kawajiri. I hope you guys remember that fight. So I thought he had learned a lesson there, but apparently he didn't, because he pulled a guard a couple of times in this fight. So now he's on the bottom and he's taking punches from Amirkhani. And Amirkhani is just holding him by his biceps, controlling his arms, and he's sticking his tongue out, just mocking him. I mean, I get that you want to play with his head, with your opponent's head, but that just came off weird. Maybe next time just call him a bitch or something. I don't know, that might have worked better. That might have been a better way of punking your opponent. So anyway, then Amirkhani lets him up, and I thought that he could have held him there for a little bit longer, but I guess he was feeling real confident after showing him his tongue. And hey, maybe it was weird enough so that it got into Knight's head. Amirkhani was landing his lead hand a couple of times, both with hooks and jab. And there was the big moment of the fight when Knight dropped Amirkhani with an uppercut. So the sequence was this. Amirkhani is standing in southpaw stance and he throws a corkscrew. A corkscrew is a lead uppercut that is used to blind your opponent. Then you take an angle to the outside of your opponent's feet so that you have the outside angle, which is a dominant position, and that creates a clear path for your left hand if you're in a southpaw position. If you're in orthodox, then it's a lead uppercut, it's a lead left uppercut, and the space is created for your right hand. So Amirkhani does that pretty much the way you're supposed to do it, and for some reason Knight pivots on his back foot and just finds Amirkhani's head with an uppercut of his own. And that's fucking crazy because a corkscrew is supposed to blind you. And then you take an angle so you're to the side of your opponent. But somehow Jason Knight just found Amirkhani's head and dropped him. That's some fucking crazy shit, man. And then he got crazy going for a submission finish, and he didn't capitalize on the opportunity there. Then they got back up to their feet, and Amirkhani was obviously hurt, and Jason Knight drops him again with another uppercut. That one was a counter to a right hook. And then he pulls guard again. And I understand that he has good rubber guard. He's a 10th planet jiu-jitsu student, and he wants to be in a comfortable position, so he pulls guard. But when you hurt your opponent twice, you gotta think about capitalizing on your opportunities and take chances that have the highest reward possible. And in my opinion, trying to get on top would be much better for him. Not only position-wise, but also for the judges. But hey, that's what he was most comfortable with, so I respect that. And he actually got a good triangle attempt, so he's definitely comfortable in his abilities from that position, so that's good for him. And you gotta love Jason Knight. He actually knows how to talk shit. In the beginning of the second round, he was shouting to Amirkhani, "Your chin is weak, boy," and "come here, bitch," and then calling him a bitch a couple of times. Way better than sticking your tongue out. The leg kicks were something that was working for Jason Knight throughout the whole fight. I thought that Amirkhani can catch one of them and turn it into a takedown, but Jason Knight was capable of just kicking his legs at will. Halfway through the second round, Amirkhani gets a takedown, and maybe the rubber guard of Jason Knight was making him uncomfortable because it was the second or even the third time that he just decided to stand up. And he's a strong grappler. He's usually comfortable on top. Amirkhani was getting the takedowns, but because of the rubber guard, Knight was controlling the positions. Even the ref was saying that the top fighter needs to work, and later on the ref stood them up, so maybe the judges could have paid attention to that too. Apparently it turned out that they didn't, because Amirkhani took a split decision, and I don't know, man, it was a weird fight to score. The knockdowns definitely were in favor of Jason Knight, but the ground exchanges, it's weird because if you get into a mission control, like Knight did, it's like, yeah, sure, you're controlling your opponent, but then you're also on the bottom because you got taken down, and that's points for your opponent. So it's weird. I feel like in order to be winning while you're on the bottom, you have to either continuously attempt submissions or land some good strikes. Other than that, it's not really like you're winning if you just control your opponent. Yeah, sure, he might not be able to punch you, but you're not doing a whole lot yourself. So maybe that's how the judges saw the fight. I mean, Amirkhani took the split decision, but if it went to Knight, I would not be upset either. Not unless it was an entertaining fight. And that's all for the podcast. I hope you guys liked it. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to me talk and break down and recap this event. I know I talked only about 3 fights, but that's how much time I had, and I hope you liked it. If you did, then subscribe and talk to you soon. Thanks.